And welcome to Madden and Benz Unfiltered. Tim Benz and Mark Madden with you, brought to you by Mike's Beer Bar on the North Shore. Meet me at Mike's. You got to do something fun on the North Shore. I guess it's not going to Pitt or Steelers games, so go to Mike's. Have a few beers before you go over. You're probably going to need them. That lesson sure was driven home over the course of this weekend. On Saturday, Pitt loses to Miami, and then yesterday, I think the worst 15 minutes of football that we've seen in a quarter since that Cleveland Browns game to close out the 2020 season in the playoffs. They gave up 28 in the first quarter. The scoreboard didn't look as bad, but that's just because the Bills slowly bled them to death. Mark, let's start there. Coming out of halftime, a disaster for the Steelers against the Bills. They lose 26-7. I think the whole game was summed up in those 15 minutes. How about you?
Yeah, I do too, and I think it's evidence that Aaron Rodgers shouldn't be playing. He didn't play good. He's too hindered by that contraption on his left hand, the 3 broken bones in his wrist. He can only do things right-handed. He's clumsy with the ball. He's skittish because of his condition, and I give him a lot of credit for trying to play through it, and it's just not good enough. I'd rather have Mason out there at 100% than Rodgers at whatever percent he's out there at. So that's the conclusion I draw from the third quarter in terms of moving forward. But in terms of the third quarter in and of itself, yes, it was maybe the worst 15 minutes of football the Steelers have played in my memory, and a fair representation of this season, which should be dead except for the absurdity of 6-6 being good enough to be tied for top of the AFC North.
Yeah, this year's the AFC North that is, the current representation of what was the AFC South in previous years, the NFC South in previous years. It's going to be a barely 500 team that wins that division. And frankly, Mark, I'm not ready to rule out the Bengals at this point.
Oh, I'm rooting for them. I think if Burrow had been healthy all year, they would be potentially runaway leaders in the division right now.
It's possible. And there's a couple things that we didn't get to in the podcast that are worth talking about, some things that have sort of filtered out in the time since we taped up. And one of them coming from Buffalo, that's from James Cook, the running back of the Bills, who said that we knew that they were one of the worst tackling units at corner in the NFL. So that's where we went. It was kind of interesting to me because, honestly, Mark, I praised Joey Porter Jr. for getting Cook down on a couple of occasions on the edge. And maybe what Cook was getting at is they're slow to get over to those spots. But I thought that those guys are getting to the second and third levels of the defense completely unscathed. And it took some cornerback efforts to get them down. To me, that just indicates there's issues at all 3 levels of the defense when it comes to the run game.
Well, I think they missed Derek Harmon terribly at the first level, but that's no excuse. He's one guy. TJ Watt said the Bills kept doing the same thing and succeeding at it. I think that's probably true. I think the Steelers' defense is an utter embarrassment, considering its price tag especially. I think the highest priced guys are among the worst guys. And TJ Watt, no sacks yesterday, and the Bills had 2 backup tackles in there. Cam Hayward's getting a flag after the Bills score a touchdown. And, Tim, have we yet seen any tape of Josh Allen kneeing Cam Hayward?
I haven't seen any tape, and I came to find out that Allen was not aware during his post-game press conference of the kneeing in the stomach line. I thought he was kind of downplaying what Cam had to say and what Cam did. I didn't realize at the time that he had not been told about the kneeing in the stomach part. So maybe he'll have more to say about that this week. But Mark, you got to be very, very careful using that P word when you're that close to someone in a situation like that. You could wind up like Jamar Chase and sidelined for a week for accidentally spitting. Cam came about that close.
Well, I know that Allen could not have kneed Cam in the testicles because Cam doesn't have any.
I was kind of waiting for that one, actually. We did already get a quote in here about Cam. This one comes from Mark, who says, breaking news, Cam Hayward will be standing outside your nearest grocery store with a bucket and a bell collecting money for his poor family. That relating to his mini holdout this offseason. And what have we gotten for it since? I think Steelers coaches have a right to ask.
Well, he's not going to reach his bonuses, that's for sure. He's not playing well. I mean, he does the grunt work in the trenches, but what did it get the Steelers yesterday?
They haven't done anything up front really of note, especially coming out of halftime. It's something like, I mean, how many plays have they run, period, in the third quarter the last 2 weeks? Something like 15, I think I saw something along those lines. They have been terrible coming out of halftime against these better teams.
Well, never mind just the third quarter yesterday. How about the time of possession on the game was 42 to 18?
Yeah, that's the crap
they use. It's literally impossible to win a game with that possession differential. Literally impossible.
They used to do that, Mark, when they would go to Cincinnati with Lev Bell or Jerome Bettis. That's what they used to do to the Bengals on the road, where they ground them into pulp. But that's what happened to them last night with two different running backs, and Josh Allen had his say as a running quarterback too.
They used everybody but OJ, Tim.
I think, didn't I read it was the most yards that a Bills running back has had in Pittsburgh since OJ? Actually, there was an OJ reference that I caught statistically yesterday.
The total yardage on the ground, I think, was 249, right?
Yeah.
That's the highest total ever by an opponent at Acrisure Stadium. At one time at Three Rivers, I want to say 1975, the Bills won over 300, with OJ getting over 200 of those.
Yeah, was that the playoff game that the Steelers won anyway, that one?
I don't know if it was that time or the time he killed two people. I'm not sure.
Oh, okay. One of the two. Gotcha. Something else that came up, Mark, that we didn't get into on the podcast. Aaron Rodgers got really testy with a question about the decision to hand the ball to Kenneth Gainwell on 3rd and 9. I don't know why he got so defensive about it. I mean, everything he explained was right, but he's kind of proving the point. They did a lot right on that play, and it still only got 8 yards. You needed 9. 9 is a long way to go on a 3rd down on a run.
Well, yeah, and he said that if it works, nobody says a damn thing. Well, no crap, Sherlock. And that goes for every play that anybody questions in any game ever. And Rodgers, he was kind of talking about bad routes yesterday. Maybe the real Aaron Rodgers is finally showing up in Pittsburgh, Tim.
Oh, he is, absolutely, because there was a dart about wrong routes. There was a little dart about guys in film sessions. He talked about, what was it, the Roman Wilson play where he overthrew him, but he was expecting him to do something else, like, expecting the wind. That's what it was, expecting the wind. Mark, even on the play where Gainwell made the great play, where he caught the ball one-handed, stayed in stride, and got 17 yards and a terrible throw from Rodgers, he's standing in the backfield making some sort of gesture like pointing at the turf or something like that. I don't know if he thought he slipped or something, but it's always he puts it on himself in post-game, but there's always but. There's always something on the field or something in his comments suggesting that it's not just his fault.
Well, I don't think he should play at Baltimore. I think he's too hampered. What do you think?
Yeah, I think Mason Rudolph is the better answer right now.
It takes too many pages out of the playbook. He can only do stuff right-handed like handoffs and whatnot. He's just too limited. He's also skittish, and it trickles down to the rest of the platoon.
Yeah, let me put it to you this way. If the hand heals to the point that they can actually do things naturally, then play him. But right now, if he's not much better than he was the last 2 weeks, then don't. And you got to trust Mason Rudolph then, as scary as that sounds, because based on what we've seen, the 2 games that he's been in so far this year, he doesn't look like the guy that got him to the playoffs in 2023.
Well, no, because they clearly have no trust in him, and he senses that. It wouldn't shock me, Tim, if Rodgers at some point is declared out, period, if they actually use Will Howard. And I'm not kidding. They went to Duck back when. That was dumb. They could go to Howard now, equally dumb, because Tomlin just does not trust Rudolph.
I wonder if it gets to the point, Mark, with this injury being what it is, if Rodgers declares himself out. If he's just done.
Gee, I seem to recall predicting that before he even signed.
Yeah, we're getting there.
That at some point he would pull the chute if things went bad. I'm not dismissing that, no.
I think that could happen with the loss to the Ravens. And then what? If they get to Monday Night Football and they put an 8th loss on the board against the Dolphins and it's pretty much a lost cause at that point, I could see it happening.
I have trouble imagining who they'll beat from here on out.
There's probably two more wins out there, and the two wins are probably in the combination of one of the two AFC North teams in Miami, you would think. But I only see two.
Probably. But they look so bad. I mean, yesterday was a fair representation of what they are and where they're at. They have no identity whatsoever on offense, and the defense is bad beyond description.
There were, I believe, 66,086 people in attendance yesterday, but I imagine only 66,085 of them heard the chants of Fire Tomlin and booing Renegade. The other person, of course, being Art Rudy II, who, if he did heard it, I'm sure he would just ignore it.
Well, Tim, the jig is up. The news is out. And my friend is from a foreign country, and they have a saying there. Ugh, sticks. But yeah, they're not going to get rid of Tomlin. Although the symphony has already started, like on ESPN, Rex Ryan. The Steelers should do him a favor and fire him because he'd get a job in 5 seconds. Okay, well, where? What team? How would he do? Would he be further exposed as a fraud? I pray to Jeebus up above, Tim, that he gets the New York Giants job. Because that would prove what a nitwit he is. Because he couldn't save him, it might get worse. He's not a good coach. He never was.
And he's got an alleged young franchise quarterback again that everybody's excited about out there in New York. He's no Ben Roethlisberger, but New York thinks he is. So let's see how that goes.
I don't think Jackson Dart's a franchise quarterback, but like you said, New York thinks he is.
So he would be entrusted with that. They'd talk themselves into this is Tomlin and Ben Roethlisberger 2.0. And good luck trying to prove that because I think it would blow up in his face and it would happen on a much bigger stage than Pittsburgh.
People like Rex Ryan, when he's not busy indulging his foot fetish, they think that a great team would like dump their coach to make room for Mike Tomlin. Like the New England would get rid of Mike Vrabel because, hey, Tomlin's available. We got to get him. That just wouldn't happen. I don't think that ever would happen for Mike Tomlin, but that's just absurd. He'd get a crap job with the crap team and be further exposed.
I don't think, when the topic of Tomlin and his resume comes up, that people truly understand the depth of how barren it's been around here because it just feels like point A is never had a losing season. Point B is 8 years without a playoff win, and those two things butt heads. No one brings up between the Super Bowl trip and 2015 when they actually did win a playoff game, those empty years too. It's 12 out of 14. It's not just 8 in a row.
The Steelers are getting so touchy, Tim. Like, you look at Patrick Queen was criticized.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up too with Trey Essex going back and forth online.
Yeah, and Patrick Queen was like kind of diminishing Trey Essex's career. Trey had a real good career, and he won twice. Patrick Queen's never won. Patrick Queen should shut up.
Well, just look at the stats. You think that's worthy of $41 million? I don't. Like he's like, I haven't missed a tackle in 3 weeks. Okay, you were paid $41 million to come here. How about a few more tackles behind the line of scrimmage? How about a pick?
How about winning? How about winning?
How about a sack? How about
everything here has always been based on winning until this group. This group has made it about other things.
There were 23 times that Josh Allen dropped back, and he wasn't sacked on any of them. There were 8 sacks by the Houston Texans last week against this guy. They had backup tackles, and look, I get it. You're not going to have a huge game when it comes to sack totals when the other team is running for 300 yards practically. But on the rare occasions when he did go back, sack him, change the tide, make him have to throw, make him punt, something.
Well, they were missing their 2 starting tackles.
Right, yes, exploit that.
Think about this, Tim. They were missing their 2 starting tackles, got 249 rushing yards, and didn't concede a sack.
Unbelievable against the historic defense, which continues to make history every week, just in the wrong direction. And you knew as soon as Mike Tomlin said that, it was going to blow up in his face. You knew it.
Well, and all the money these guys make, too, the highest paid defense in history. T.J. Watt, if he was the man he thinks he is, and he's not, he's just a gym teacher, meathead bully. If he was the man he thinks he is, he'd apologize for the way he's playing. He got the money. He got more than Garrett. Now Garrett is outshining him every week.
Mark, let's get to the other debacle on the North Shore. What happened to Pitt against Miami? Typical Pitt unplugging their own momentum after they built it back up with the Georgia Tech win, after they unplugged it themselves with how they played going into Notre Dame. It's the ultimate Pitt kind of season. You sort of stub your toe early. You make everybody question. Then in the darkness of what is the ACC, you build up a good conference record. You make yourself relevant again, pull off one big win, and then fall off a cliff at the end. We've seen it so many times before, not just in the Narduzzi era, but coaches before that too.
Yeah, and they'll go to the Schmuck Bowl. People are talking about maybe they'll play Penn State. I don't give a rat's ass about none of that.
What a year for Pitt Penn State this would be.
I think Heitzel is giving cause to worry too, don't you? The way he played down the stretch. It kind of reminded me of Holstein fading at the end of last year.
Could be, and it could be because he did what he did against the ACC, and when he got into tougher competition at the end versus Notre Dame and other better ACC schools, well, lo and behold, he's the guy who wound up at Pitt as opposed to being somewhere better. So, yeah, that wouldn't shock me if it kind of went down the same path.
Right, but the point is the Pitt faithful always rejoice prematurely about a guy like this. He never turns out to be the next Marino.
Mark, how about the coaching carousel, the Vatek hire of Franklin? How does that go for them? How does it wind up for Penn State? And what'd you think about this Lane Kiffin fiasco that seems to have everybody mesmerized, even if you're not in Louisiana or Mississippi?
Well, I think James Franklin's a great hire for Virginia Tech. I think his recruiting will dominate the ACC, and I think there'll be a legitimate power in that conference pretty much right away under Franklin. The Kiffin thing, it's just typical of everything that's wrong with college football. He has a contract with Ole Miss through 2031, and he just gets to walk away. Why can't Ole Miss enforce that contract, Tim?
The thing is, it's happening within the conference. So the conference could have, I would think, some sort of latitude if they wanted to prevent things like this from happening, but they don't try. It's not just the SEC. Conferences in general don't try to enforce that.
Well, right, because college football is a pyramid that funnels everybody up, players, coaches, money, everything, to the above-the-line teams. And even though LSU had, 5 losses this year, and Ole Miss has 1, LSU not in the playoffs, Ole Miss is in. Ole Miss isn't an above-the-line team, and LSU is. And it's so absurd, and I can't quite figure it out, but I'm not sure it's ever going to change.
Yeah, it's a hierarchy system, even within the conferences themselves, like Michigan and Ohio State are, and Penn State in the Big Ten. And then in the SEC, it's Alabama, Georgia, LSU. In the ACC, it's Clemson and no one else. Or in the ACC in basketball, it's Duke, North Carolina, and no one else. So, yeah, I mean, like there is a hierarchy system that exists.
Tim, the Lane Kiffin thing is a microcosm of why I don't pay any attention to college football. I just don't care because of stuff like that.
Like, you can't rob a coach from another team and just outpay him out of his contract in the NFL. There's compensation that needs to come with it because the NFL sets up those
rules. Well, and the NFL team that has the guy under contract could just say no.
Right. Yes. And the same thing, theoretically, I would think could happen within an SEC or within a Big Ten. Maybe not between the conferences, but the conferences can make their own rules. They do it for everything else. Why couldn't they do it for something like this?
Well, again, I don't care if they do or don't. I'm not watching. And that's the price they paid. I'm sure they don't care, but I definitely don't care.
All right, on to the Penguins before we get some questions here, Mark, largely about the Steelers, but let's get some Pens talk going as well. They got the Flyers tonight. What'd you think of how they played over the weekend, and what do you expect tonight against Philly, who closed November pretty hot as opposed to what the Penguins did?
I thought they played one good period over the weekend, and that was the third period at Columbus. Other than that, they were absolutely terrible for 2 periods at Columbus and then all 3 periods at home against Toronto. I don't know if they're falling back to earth. I don't know if they're an up-and-down team. I don't know what the basis of the inconsistency is. I know that Malkin is noticeably decelerating. They miss Raquel and Brazo. But then again, if those 2 guys can hurt you that badly, you're not much of a team to begin with. I don't like that the coach is starting to rely more on veterans. I didn't see the point at all of calling up Tristan Brose and scratching him for 2 out of 3 games.
Yeah, that was Sullivan-esque, wasn't it?
Yeah. Like, if that's where the GM has to step in and go to him. Look, the priority is development. developmental, not to sneak in the playoffs. The GM has to have input on what the coach does, to the point of telling him what to do sometimes, which is what hurt the Penguins when Sullivan was coach and ultimately cost him his job.
Yeah, but he looks like Corey O'Connor, so that's cute. So we can pump that out on social media, because I'm sure the mayor of Pittsburgh is exactly the parallel you want to be on, because this city's got no problems for him to fix.
Actually, that's pretty funny.
You thought it was funny?
That they look alike? Yeah, they look almost identical.
I didn't realize how much shorter Corey was than Kyle Dubas.
I didn't realize how tall Kyle was.
Well, maybe that's it. Maybe that's the parallel to draw. I'm not one to look at height, but I thought it was funny to look at. All right, so let's get to Derek. Mark, do you feel more sorry for TJ for having another game where we could easily have gotten from Derek Watt or Cam, who won't get that end-of-year bonus and may need to take out a second job to feed his family? Well, he's got those commercials that he's doing for the gas station, so that's going for him, which is nice.
And there's always Barber College.
Eric says perhaps one of the most frustrating components of this atrocity is the minute the Steelers win another game, dopes en masse will say that they've turned it around. Might be a little late to turn it around this year, and as soon as they do turn it around, they'll lose again. Like, there's absolutely nothing that stops me from thinking the potential exists that they could win in Baltimore and lose to Miami on Monday Night Football. Absolutely nothing. That could completely happen.
There are X amount of people in this town, it includes a lot of radio hosts, that if they beat Baltimore, we'll be talking about how the AFC is wide open and the Steelers could beat anybody.
Brett says the Steelers have overrated their players for a long time. They've got a bunch of no-ring bozos. Forget the ring. How about a playoff win? Forget the ring. Just get a playoff win.
Tim, I told everybody the right thing to do with TJ Watt was to make him play out the final year of his deal and then franchise him as necessary. Everybody told me I was wrong, but look at TJ Watt now. It was absolutely the right thing to do. But Art Rooney II is a soft owner who never wants his players to know an unpleasant moment. And in fact, he's scared to death of all of them and of his head coach.
This is from Justin, who says, did you see the stat that the Steelers lead the league in receptions by running backs and the least receptions by receivers? It's mind-boggling. I'm not surprised by either stat. I'm certainly not surprised by the wide receiver stat. The running back stat is only surprising to me because I'm stunned they've run enough plays to get that many throws to the running backs.
I think Arthur Smith's doing the worse job than Matt Canada did, and I'm very serious.
This comes from Yinzer Gear Store. It says, nice to see that the broader fan base is waking up to what many of us have been saying for years. You guys have been on it before most. Appreciate you not letting up. This organization is an embarrassment to the city. I honestly do think, what was going through Art Rooney II's head last night when that was happening, when Renegades getting booed, when they're calling for the coach to be fired. Is he thinking, maybe I'm missing something here? Or is he just mad at his own fans?
He's mad at his own fans. He's thinking, we're right. We've always been right. They should have faith. That's what he's thinking. I guarantee it.
This is from Marshall, who says, what about the fight this season? They have never come back. What about pride? They don't have any of it. Yeah, I think they were flat. I think the players spoke to that without saying it directly. I mean, there were guys.
They're always flat.
They weren't just afraid of the Bills by the end. They were afraid of the media by the end. Like Jalen Ramsey left, and Roman Wilson and Joey Porter all left before the media was even left. Roman Wilson walked out of there with his eye black still on. All right.
Yeah, I don't blame him. He got no targets, right?
I don't think he did. No.
I don't.
No, because they missed the deep one to him early in the game.
One target. I mean, I don't blame him for being pissed. I don't blame certain of those guys. I don't blame them because they deserve better. They deserve more of a chance.
Richard says they play an ultra vanilla dink and dunk, no risk offense simply because Tomlin lives in his fears and will not adjust to anything and still thinks his defense can win them games. How he could think that, I don't know, because the defense has lost them as many games as the offense has this year.
Well, Tim, here's what's going on with them mentally right now, okay? The players know they stink. The team stinks. And they just can't believe it. You look at TJ Watt talking after the game yesterday. He was equal parts angry but bewildered too. And then Tomlin, you look at him and hear him talk, he just doesn't know what to do. he doesn't have a clue on how to fix it.
This is, let's see, let's get one from Bill. Let's make it simple. The Steelers organization stinks. Mike Tomlin is a fraud, but he shares the fans' frustration when he gets booed. Frig off, Mike Tomlin. Well, I mean, I'm not sure what else he's supposed to say there. No, I didn't hear it. Like, lie and pretend that he didn't hear it. Of course he heard it.
Yeah, I among my criticisms of Tomlin, which are many and pretty extreme, I don't think his reaction to being booed is one of them.
What do you mean?
I mean, I don't care what he responds to when it comes to the,
okay.
who cares? I care that he's a crap coach who can't fix it.
Mark wants to know, should we beg the Raiders to release Kenny Pickett? No, you should draft a quarterback who's worth the crap, but I don't know if one exists in this year's draft. That's the problem. And if they don't, then what are you going to do? You're going to recycle another 39-year-old? What's the next step?
Well, this was supposed to be the all-in year. I mean, what do they have really set up for the future, Tim?
Will Howard. That's who they got, Mark. Will Howard.
You know what could happen? They might escape the mushy middle going in the other direction, which would be fine by me.
And just sink down to 6-11 or something like that.
I mean, not this year. Well, maybe this year, but I'm talking they could be like a 3-14 team next year.
Well, look at it, Mark. That's true. Yeah, that's true. They could finish under 500 this year, go to the lower half of the NFL, and then be in like the lower third by the time the draft is wherever it is in 2027. Forget about all the enthusiasm of 2026. And then like start a legit rebuild. Because it's not just going to, like, if they finish beneath 500, I hope people out there don't think that Art Rooney is going to react by getting rid of Mike Tomlin. Like, he's not going to say, okay, we've had our losing season. I can finally get rid of Mike. He's not thinking like that. He's thinking all of you are wrong for not seeing why Mike Tomlin is a great coach.
No, he's just not going to get rid of Mike Tomlin is the short and sweet of it.
Let's get to this one from Donnie. I think it's very possible they lose out. At this point, Miami and Cleveland are 50-50 games. No way they beat the Ravens or Detroit. Yes, they both are playing as bad as well, but they'll find ways to win. Yeah, because the Bills weren't playing well either. And one thing that the Bills are just flat out bad at, it doesn't matter who they're playing against, is the run. But the Steelers only average 3.2 yards per rush. This is the 30th rated rush defense in all of football.
Yeah, I mean, like, I love getting on Matt Williamson's Twitter after losses because he just delivers a machine gun barrage of negative stats, and everyone is damning. Because Matt's not a critic, right? Like,
no, he's a scout. He's an information guy.
Like us, but he can kill you with analysis, and after games like yesterday, he sure does.
It's a given that the Pirates will be perennial embarrassment, but not having hope in the Steelers sure sucks. That comes from M98J9K. Well, you know what? You just have to be patient enough to allow for a rebuild if they allow themselves to rebuild, which they haven't done. They've tried to stick bubblegum and chicken wire up there along the steel curtain so they could rebuild it, but say it quietly, do it quietly, not announce it to the world. Well, maybe their win-loss record is what has to happen to announce it to the world.
You know what question I have at the beginning of my column I'm working on, Tim? If you could get Aaron Rodgers all hopped up on ayahuasca or whatever drug he's taken now to play through the pain of the 3 broken bones in his wrist, what do you think he'd say about the Steelers not being the situation he'd hoped for, not what he bargained for? Because it can't be what he thought it would be.
I think he would say, I should have made it Minnesota or bust.
Yeah, I think so too.
That's how I view it. All right, Mark, I know you got a couple days coming up this week that you're off. What's going on this week? You heading out for a little bit, little pre-Christmas break?
Briefly, tomorrow I'll be at Conneaut Lake. I'll be on the boat tour to see the lake's Christmas trees.
I didn't know they did that. Have you seen it before? Is this the first time?
No, this will be a first time. I'm quite looking forward.
So this is like a little Lake Lugano kind of tour for Mark Madden here in Italy or something like that.
No, it's not at all like that.
Does George Clooney have a house on Conneaut Lake by any chance?
He does not.
Okay. All right. So Mark is off tomorrow. So make sure you check him out today to wrap up the Bills game. The Madden Monday podcast is posted. We'll be back next Monday after the Ravens, and we'll see how that goes. Mark will also preview the game against the Flyers tonight for the Pens on 105.9 The X. We are brought to you by Mike's Beer Bar on the North Shore. This is Madden Benz Unfiltered at Trib Live and the Fans First Network.